Hello, everybody. Good to have you here. It's Wednesday, 9 o'clock. It's time for our show. I hope you are well. And today we will talk about the law of destruction. And this entire chapter, if you want to read, it's on the book, Spirit's book. It's I don't remind the
It's
chapter.
it's part 3, chapter 6.
I know it's book 3, but
Chapter 6.
chapter
Chapter
6. Yeah,
6.
yeah. So it's there. So if you want to know more about this topic, because here, unfortunately, the timing will not allow us to cover the entire chapter. But if you want to get deep a little bit, you can go to the Spirit's book, chapter 6, and read more about it. So, meanwhile, how are you, Miss Gibbons?
Very well. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here with you once again. Nice to see Charles. Hi, Charles. And welcome, everyone.
Hello, Silvia.
Um,
Hello, Stevan.
to, Hello. Today is a very important chapter, actually. A very one of the most important. Well, the Spirit's books, everything is important, but this is very much into mind. I think wars and destruction and diseases. So we are going to cover this subject today. So, feel free to ask questions and. Will be nice and welcome, and hope that everyone is well and much peace for everyone. Boa tarde a todos. Hoje nós vamos falar sobre a lei de destruição, os capítulos importantes do Livro dos Espíritos. Bem-vindo a todos e vamos ver, nossa reunião hoje vai ser boa, né, com a graça de Deus. E bem-vindos a todos. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear. So, bonsoir, Charles.
Bonsoir, Steven. Hello, bonsoir, everyone. Very happy to be here again with you today. So you did not see, but I entered quite on top of time, just in time. I see. Sorry, Silvia and Steven, for this stress I caused, but here I am, and very happy to talk a little bit about this law of destruction, which is quite difficult. Not very obvious to understand, and we will try to clarify it. Bonsoir à tous, très heureux d'être parmi vous de nouveau ce soir.
Okay, good. Let me add a video here. This video is interesting because the video it's one of the consequences of this. So let me share my screen. Hey, good evening, Marco. Good to have you here, my friend. Okay. Let's go.
Has a cause. I know, you know.
All of them knew.
It's logical and natural to believe that. But what about the unexplained events? Should we simply follow some belief just to believe in something? It's easy to find the causes of many effects.
If it's wet, it's because it has rained.
If it's cold, it's because winter has come.
Okay, these are silly simplifications, but you're about to see what I mean. Picture this. When a plane crashes and kills hundreds of innocent people, or when a child is born with an incurable disease. Now, a crucial point. One of the most well-known attributes of God is his supreme benignity. Don't you agree? Humanity has always used the words love, justice, goodness as synonymous for God. Can something that is love with a capital L Run a world where, for example, a child is born with an incurable disease and will be made to suffer what few days they have left? It's divine will, some would say. We begin now with the concepts of the Spiritist teachings in regards to the law of cause and effect. Every effect has a cause. So we can conclude that if the cause of a suffering is not in the present life, it should be in the past, that is, in previous lives.
Here lies a very important concept: reincarnation.
You will find the link to our episode about reincarnation in the description box.
Going back to the law of cause and effect, we can mention the ancient concept of karma used by Buddhists and Hindus.
What you did in the past reflects in the present.
Right. But the good news is that Spiritism proposes a proactive perspective. It's important to understand the past, to realize the present when we pass through difficult times. But what's more important is to be aware that our decisions today are the ones that will define how our future will be. We are totally responsible for everything that happens now and will happen in our lives. To sow goodness today, it's your decision.
There is perfect balance in the universe.
It's time to discover the spiritual laws. It's time to be free.
In the description box, you will find links to a more profound study.
Okay. Okay. I like this video. Very, very interactive, and very well explained as well. So, law of destruction. Questions always come up to our mind, like we saw in the video. Why a plane crashed and killed hundreds of people? Why a baby died? An innocent child. So why we have war? No, why we have the earthquakes, the tsunamis, and all these things. And based on the law of cause and effect, if we having this cause, it means, if we're having this effect, it means we sure have a cause. And to understand the law of destruction is understand part of this law as well. And I like to start our conversation here. Let's go to Charles. And Charles, why we have destruction? Why God having one of his laws, the law of destruction?
Well, okay, very good question, Stevan. Thank you. The first thing we have to understand is what we usually call destruction is in reality just a transformation. Okay. What happens, for instance, when we die? Our spirit, which was temporarily incarnated in a physical body, is just freed from this body, from this physical body. And the life of the spirit continues beyond the death, continues living in the spiritual world. And on top of this, we'll have, as much as needed, opportunity to reincarnate, as it has been very well explained in the video. So when we see the destruction under this point of view, the destruction can even be considered as necessary in order for everything to be destroyed, in order to be reborn and regenerated. For instance, when we get old, our physical body, I'm feeling already, I'm over 60 now, it's starting to get some difficulties here, some difficulties there, and so on and so on and so on. And when I even in 10 or 20 years, if I'm still here, it will be even more difficult. My mother, which reaches the 90, had Alzheimer, and her physical body was quite how to say, with a lot of handicaps. So for her, dying, the so-called destruction, was just get the freedom again of the spirit, and then later on come back with a brand new body of a small baby, which is tailor-made as per the wish of the spirit. Isn't this fantastic? When we look at it from this angle, of course, we can understand why destruction is necessary. So now we have to be careful because destruction, let me just see quickly the questions. Yes, the destruction is in the natural law. Okay, when we talk about war, it's not exactly the same. This is a kind, or when we talk about, for instance, nowadays, a lot of living species are disappearing because of the pollution, because of the global warming, and so on. So this is what we can call a destruction which is a little bit beyond nature. Okay, so we can see we have to make the distinction between the necessary destruction as per the natural law, and also the abusive destruction, which is generally the work coming from the mankind. So necessary destruction as per the natural law is something positive because it's a transformation, but abusive destruction is never good. It's like always in the spiritist body of knowledge, we always are seeking the balance between what is necessary and what is superfluous or what is abusive. Okay, and so this has to guide our the care we are taking for our physical body, for the animals around us, for the nature, and so on. Consuming reasonably. Don't, like Spiritist body of knowledge doesn't say we have to stop consuming immediately everything. No, we just have to focus on what is necessary and try reduce as much as possible, if not completely, all what is superfluous. Okay, so that's, I would say, the guideline we can see now. Of course, there are some destruction, as you told, earthquake, big calamities, and so on, which are also in nature. And here, the fact that we know, for instance, when we are in a country with a seismic risk, the intelligence of mankind is doing everything in order to prevent the harm caused by this highly probable earthquake. So this is why in the regions where there is a risk of earthquake, of course, we know how to construct buildings and houses that will resist, or maybe will be destroyed but do not collapse, do not kill the people which are living in it. For instance, in Japan, you have there are very big, important, significant earthquake almost daily, but we even do not hear about because unless it is a very big earthquake like the one who caused the disaster of Fukushima with a 30-meter tsunami wave. Of course, sometimes the natural phenomena are going beyond the limits. But here we see as well that the destruction is inducing mankind to use its intelligence in order to prevent the damages caused by this natural phenomenon. Okay. Thing is also now with the global warming, by the storms, the rainfalls, the hail, and so on, is more frequent, and humankind will have now to start thinking, adapt the codes and norms in order to make them suitable for the new situation we are entering now. Okay, So all these are, how to say, ways to understand the necessity of the destruction and the advantages which are coming out of them. I hope I have answered the question, Stevan. At least partly. Let's continue.
Yeah. No, you answer, my friend. Uh, and Silvia, uh, why? Okay, we understand now why the law of destruction, why God allow it to happen. Like in the video, if He is goodness, if He is love, He is all these good things, why He is allowing us to suffering? Why He is allowing us go into such pain?
Okay. Ooh. That's actually that's a question that's quite general, isn't it? And very common, because whenever people have any kind of problem, not only calamities or anything that happens in their lives, they do, why is God doing this to me? And in many times, it's actually a source of people stopping believing in God, because it's almost like they feel that God is personally targeting them to hurt them, which is a very erroneous idea. It's quite common to hear people say, "Oh, I have nothing to do with God anymore after what happened to so and so or to me." And I think the first thing to understand is that God does not target anyone to suffer. It's not specific for anyone. And, like Charles explained really well, the law of destruction is part of the laws of nature and leads to the transformation. So sometimes when, either you have calamities, I have the answer, that the spirits give an answer here, which better than my own words, but it says this is to allow us to progress and to advance more quickly, because I think, and this is another thing, what this word that said, the spirit says to make them men advance more quickly, and that's necessary for the regeneration of the spirit. And I think this is, sometimes people say, why, why do we have, but we tend to really accommodate ourselves, and really sit on the fence and not do anything. And, oh, things are good now, so let's go on. And I think if we look around our lives now, society generally, we find that we had accommodated to a level of life that was destroying our planet, making things easier. It was just using the natural resources and creating a lot of problems. And we have to now, I think you mentioned it yourself, Stevan, about tsunamis, and like before, El Nino, which is that weather that happens in the Pacific, used to happen once every 7 years. Now happens every year, and they have one called El Nina. So you see, countries like Australia, parts of South America, they go from years that they have terrible droughts. And then maybe a year afterwards, they have terrible floods that destroys everything. The drought, and the soil gets really burned up, animals die, and then you have this terrible torrential rains that wash everything away and cause terrible destruction. You don't have that time of rain that falls, and it allows slowly, the end goes allows to go into the earth to create that sheet of water underneath that will provide the water to come up. And then this is all part of many, not everything, of course, I can blame me for everything, but this is part of the planet as well, moving and changing. But in many ways, we are creating this. Also, I saw a picture the other day that broke my heart. They had a lot of orcas, baby orcas, those whales, dead because they've been eating plastic. It's tragic, it's a destruction that's terrible because we are careless to throw rubbish. uh, when you go to the sea and, in the rubbish and everything. And this we can make a difference. So this we can change. There is lots of things that we can change. But we have to be aware of this, because there are things we can change and we should do it to help. But then be other calamities, because we need to have this push. I think, um, if something happens, say for instance, an example maybe, I remember seeing this person who bought a really very posh, lovely house in Oxfordshire. And there was a beautiful place, nice garden, little river going by for years and years and years. And then, of course, now with the change in weather, the river is constantly flooding and the home was flooding. So what they did, they put this special fence, they created this thing. And the house, when there is any flood, the house is an island. They cannot go out or in from the house. So and it's just an example that before they didn't do anything about it, but it forces you and forces us to look and to create different things. We say for instance, the space race as well, which created a lot of push here. And this country, oh no, God, they're the first one. We have to go to the moon now because they've gone to space first, so we have to beat them in. And it's all, pushing people to grow, to progress. And I think that's, basically, very quickly, why we have these difficulties and we have calamities. But I think one point as well that I find really important, that the spirits remind us actually in this chapter more than once, is the fact that we, those kinds of things, how do I put it? If I see where we need to be pushed to change, we need to progress, and calamities always will happen because we need that, but it doesn't last for a long time. And how do I put it? It's oh gosh, it's just gone from my head. Because we see life as everything. The life we have is short. Even if we live in this earth 100 years, which many people nowadays are reaching very, very old ages, there is a point we will die and we go to the spiritual world. But we tend to see it as a big thing because we only see in terms of this life. We are going to go to the spiritual world, and we have eternal life. So it says, when we are in this earth, we may be, oh, how horrible it is. But in the spiritual world, we have a different perspective, because from there, we can see our horizon is much longer. We can see much more. So we can see quite a lot of the reasons why things happen the way they happen. It brings us more understanding. So if we stop seeing only this moment in this little life that we have now, instead of looking to the eternity of our spiritual life, we wouldn't treat this as huge calamities. It would be just some hiccups, in our life that we went through, situations, flooding and everything. It helps people to develop, you're probably seeing how it is in Holland, that they have this process, that they actually lift the house when there is a flood. The water pushes the house up. Like here in England, we have all these works about people building houses, and this person actually built a house by the River Thames, which always floods. And with this kind of process that they have in Holland, so that is, they build the house normal, but whenever there is a flood, there is like a gap, and the water pushes the house, so the house itself will not be flooded. So it's all new technology that calamities like flooding maybe helped people to develop. So there is always things, really. You shouldn't see things as whole, but experiences and things that we go through in order that our spirit becomes aware, learned, and enlightened. Thank you. Thank you.
Great, my dear. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And yes, we always try to get mad. I would say when we are in a difficult times, we like to point the fingers to someone, except to ourselves. We like to point the fingers. It is God, it is my neighbor, it is my mom, it is my dad, it is this, it is my boss, it is my job, it is everything except ourselves. So we needed to evaluate ourselves more often, and try to think, okay, what's the consequences here. Let me see here. So yeah, Marcus putting a long text here. Let me read. So in the same thing, we can say it is the wars. No, like this happened because politician, money, all of these things, and like innocent people die because of that. So they should be there. They deserve it. We don't know. We cannot accuse. We cannot say 100% it. But anyway, Charles, think like this. Is there any other way or different methods like we could learn without having these destructive disasters? So that is another way, like, okay, we need to go through this. Okay, I understand. No problem. But instead of a plane crash, there is another way, less mortal, let's say. There is an alternative for this or not?
Yes, of course. I mean, the law of destruction is existing on Earth, but on higher evolved planet, it is much softer than here. So the alternative path is, okay, let's work in our evolution, intellectual evolution, but also evolution in morality and goodness. And if we use our free will to evolve, of course, the law of destruction gets less and less necessary. Okay, the law of destruction is necessary here. You talked about the war, and Silvia as well. Why do we have wars here on the earth? It's because selfishness, because of lack of moral evolution. Okay, so the alternative path is and it's about destruction, and we can even more generally talk about suffering. It is not mandatory to suffer in order to progress. one can progress by using correctly the free will without needing to suffer. Okay. The thing is, the reality at the level of evolution we are today is that we need this needle of suffering in order to, how to say it, stimulate us in the evolution, to stimulate us in making better prevention, stimulate us in stopping what causes the suffering, what is causing the suffering and the destruction. Okay, so indeed, as Silvia told it, this destruction and these calamities, COVID, for instance, is another example. We can understand it as something which is accelerating a little bit, not so much, the evolution of the people. And I got several, even last weekend, we were in Vegimo in Belgium, in the big gathering of the French-speaking Spiritist movement. And one more person told me she started studying Spiritism during the COVID. So you see, if 1 or 2 or 3% of the people are changing, it's already 1, 2, 3%. And then the next COVID or next event, you have 3% more, and the next one you have 3% more, and little by little you reach evolution of the whole humanity. And a lot of these persons, without COVID, maybe they would never have, or not in this life, got interested in studying a little bit more about spirituality. So it's another good example. But of course, one can decide, for instance, a lot of people come to the Spiritist teaching or Spiritist body of knowledge by the suffering. But few are coming just by interesting in something or got an inspiration, try to understand better what it is by using correctly the free will. Okay, so the alternative path is this: let's get rid of our selfishness, let's get rid of our excessive pride. Let's transform all this into generosity, into charity, into fraternity, into humility. And as long as we work in this way, we don't need the destruction so much. Okay. And another thing which is important also to say is, one could say, hey, if destruction is so good, is helping in quickening our transformation, this does not mean that we should force or accelerate the destruction. For instance, one way is, for instance, to do suicide. So it's not. This is not a solution. As I told at the beginning, suicide is an abusive destruction, which is in fact bringing more harm than help, because it brings a lot of consequences. So this is clearly the abusive destruction. The best one is, and Marco Davis just remembered it in his comment, is exactly let's follow the laws of nature, because nature knows exactly when is the best moment and so on for having the destruction, which I remember, it's not a destruction, it's just a transformation.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Charles. Hey, Perrine. A long time don't see you, my friend. I hope you are good. Perrine said, she's asking here,
to spirit.
do spirits choose the destruction they will have to go through during incarnated life in order to progress faster? Silvia.
Well, yes, liking everything depends of the spirit. Some of us don't have this opportunity, but I think I give an example, reminding one of the books of Chico Xavier, dictated by André Luiz. If I'm not sure if it's Mundo Maior, I'm not quite sure now. But they tell the story of this accident. They are in the space in the spiritual world, and André Luiz working with his tutor. And there was a plane crash, and every single person in the plane died. And the interesting thing, though, because the story, in a way, the way they explained to them what happened was, um, there were these two spirits that they were quite advanced, and they were asked to work in a higher level of the spiritual world, and they couldn't put through them, so they couldn't go through the barrier. And then they came and talked to the person in charge and everything, you know, why. I said, well, there is no reason, you know, your spirit have advanced enough to go through the barrier without any problem. So they check their backgrounds, incarnation, because I think, you know, in Spiritism we accept the law of reincarnation. So it went to when many centuries earlier, as a spirit still not very advanced, and quite cruel people and everything. During war, they used to kill their prisoners by throwing them down the mountain because they didn't want to feed them, or because they didn't want prisoners, whatever the reason they did when they were soldiers and, you know, lords and fighting and everything. So everybody had already forgiven them, they had fine, they had worked very hard, but within themselves they had not forgiven themselves yet. There was like that thought inside of their spirit who that used to, you know, they didn't forgive what they had done themselves. So they chose to reincarnate, and they went to be pilots of aeroplanes, and the passengers that were in the aeroplane were spirits of lots and lots of, all of them were spirits of people who had committed suicide in previous lives by throwing themselves from high places. And they chose, and I think that's maybe answer the Perrine's questions. They chose to come and to go through that experience in a way to clear themselves. So they have very important spirits, very spirit, and them as well. So they were brought together, and there was an accident. It was a failure in the plane, and the plane fell, hit a mountain, and they all died. So those spirits actually, some of them had chosen to go through the experience to clear themselves from the guilt of having committed suicide, and the other two were because they had people killed by throwing them down the mountains and everything. And of course, Charles probably is quite aware, because in France during the Cathars, that's how the Catholic Church used to kill the Cathars by throwing them down mountains in many places there near Béziers. But so they chose that experience to clear themselves. And of course, those spirits who are more advanced help the others that were not so advanced. So in a way, there was a choice there to go to the experience so they could clear their spirits from their things that were holding them back in the past, and one helping the other. So in that way, you know, they chose that experience. And I think this sort of explains as well that in a way God is not punishing anyone. The terrible accident, you know, that people died, they were actually, it was being giving a gift of clear themselves from past guilt and being able to help one another that was in that situation. And, you know, the spirits were all there helping them, taking them away. And, you know, all of them were able to overcome and progress spiritually. So this is very important. And if you allow me to to speak a little longer. I just like to point out as well, because in the video that we saw, and you also mentioned, Stevan, the question of many children sometimes, they are born with problems, physical problems. And, and usually people take it as God doing something terrible to them and everything. Someone becoming a child a child becomes ill, which is very, very sad. It doesn't take the fact that it's extremely excruciating, painful for the parents to see your baby be born with problems and going through lots of operations. But sometimes it's the choice of the spirit, either because they want to clear something from their past lives, or because they wanted the experience, or they can even be spirits of light choosing to go through a life like that, and maybe a death very young as a child, to actually help the parents and the family. So I think if we, go back to what I had mentioned before, the fact that the Spirit said we only see the corporeal life now, in the here and now. Sometimes we get very angry with God. We don't understand that in reality we are being given a gift of light, of love. And most times we choose that life ourselves, either because we inflicted on somebody else and we want to go to the pain, or because in previous life we decide that we didn't want to be ill too long, we didn't want to suffer, and we cut our life short. And then you come back to sort of finish the time of the illness that you had. So everything, there is a reason, there is a purpose. Everything, there is a cause, and there is of everything, there is a cause there, and an intelligent cause. And if we were able to clear our vision and see spiritually, as I said, the horizon, the eternal horizon of our spirits, we would see a very different thing, and see that God actually is merciful every single time. And he gives us every day opportunity to clear ourselves, to be better. But sometimes we need to have the push. I think we talked about COVID. Well, they found a vaccine. I know there are a lot of people against the COVID vaccine, and, there probably there are side effects, whatever it is. But I personally, and I may, I am sure probably people think differently. They created a vaccine in a year, modern technology and support, because for the first time, I think in, I don't know when, that a lot and lots and lots of pharmaceutical laboratories came to work together to find something. And, there was problem, and probably there is problem, and I accept that there is problem in everything. But I think if we didn't have had the vaccine, I think a lot more people would have died of the COVID vaccine. So, that was a push as well for medicine to advance. And I think, like Charles said, maybe next time it'll be easier. There'll be more people helping. There'll be more people being empathic. And because I think one of the things that we seem to have, we human beings, we seem to be at our best when things are worse. Sometimes when there is big problems, big difficulties, neighbors come together. You never saw them before, but they come together, they help each other, because everybody's in that same situation. And I remember, I couldn't quite understand it then, but I remember once this English lady telling me that the best time she ever had was during the war, because people were friendly, they were helping each other. Somebody had the house bombed, so they got all the families, divided the people to go to the other houses, they shared food and all that kind of thing. And sometimes we need to be pushed to do that, when we could actually, if we did that every day, we didn't have to have so many calamities. Sorry, I went on a little bit, but I said it.
No. It's good. It's good. Uh, why,
I,
for
I
example,
hope I answer Perini's question anyway. A part of it, though. Sorry, sorry.
uh, what what's missing from us? Because let's take this example of war, because there is a current war ongoing. Uh, yeah, you want Perrine. She said, "Thank you, thank you, Perrine. Hope to see you again someday." And why we didn't learn with our previous mistakes? Like we had World War I, we have World War II, and now we have a war again. Why we don't learn? Why we don't change our mindset? What we are missing to not learn these lessons? And okay, let's move forward. It's for both of you. Charles, you say you
Yes,
smile first, so you go first.
it is the predominance of the animal nature of the mankind, huh? Selfishness, pride. Uh, uh, you told there is one war again. No, there is not one war again. There are nowadays more than 80 wars, conflicts
Mhm.
in the world. Of course, we talk about Ukraine. We see also Israel with Gaza. We see in Sudan, now in Khartoum. But these are three out of 80. So it is terrible what is happening. And how to say, this abusive destruction coming from the wars is really the purpose is to awaken the conscience of the men and women of the humankind in order to say, stop, we don't want this anymore. You mentioned WW1, WW2. There was also 1870 war. So three wars basically between Germany, France, and in Europe itself. And after World War II, what happened? A lot of people said, "No, it's enough. We cannot. It's terrible what happened. Also with this Holocaust and concentration camps, and no, it cannot be, cannot continue like that." But what we can see is some preventive measures have been taken and have shown to be efficient because, between WW1 and WW2, there was only 1 or 2 decades, not more. And now we are already 7 decades after WW2, more than 7 decades, and still we are in a quite peaceful situation. At least I'm living here close to the boundary of Germany. There is absolutely not any animosity between French and German anymore, as it was during centuries. So we can see that the effect of these wars is to awaken the conscience of humankind in order to stop doing these things, to develop more the fraternity between different nationalities, different languages, different cultures, understanding the richness of the diversity in the world,
Mhm.
and stopping all these things. What happens then in Russia and in Khartoum and Israel or wherever? When we look, the big majority of the conflicts today is as Léon Denis told in the Spiritism and the War, the book he published, is the fight between authority and liberty or freedom. Okay, and there is even a question: in the spirit book. Let me see the question 744, which is a little bit. There are some different opinions even within the spiritist movement about this question. Kardec was asking, what has been the goal of providence in making war necessary? So the question is, somehow providence has made the war necessary. Of course, the wars are happening, and it's more humankind than providence. Okay, this can be an interpretation. But why is the war necessary? The answer of the spirits is one of the shortest of the spirits book. It's only three words: freedom and progress. Okay, because when there is some dictature, whether from kings or queens, as we had in France before the revolution, or most of the wars is exactly this war to get freedom, and Ukraine is an example. The Ukrainian population wanted to free themselves from the authority of the Russian regime, and go in the direction of liberty, of democracy, seeing the example we have in the Western European countries. And this is what the Russian apparently did not want. Of course, my interpretation is a little bit simplistic, but simplifying a little bit, that is the reason of this war. Okay, so we can even understand that. In the French Revolution, there were also a lot of people killed and guillotined and so on. But the result came. It took some time. It was some 100 years oscillating regimes, comeback of the kings, and emperor again, then a democracy, and then until more or less 1 century, until there were a more or less stable democratic regime in France. And this is what the people in the century of light wanted. They wanted freedom of expression, freedom, more justice, and for that, the only thing we can see is indeed the answer of the spirits makes sense. The war was necessary in order to conquer this. So, question is now, how long will it take for Russia or Ukraine and other countries? Hopefully, it will not take so long as it took in France. Hopefully, now with some more good examples, the conscience will awaken quicker. This understanding of fraternity and letting everyone free to select the regime they want, and not trying to impose one regime onto the other by force or by war. This will prevail, so that we are eliminating progressively these reasons, these causes, which unfortunately still have the consequence of having these violent events and this abusive destruction.
Yes, it is. We can say you can say that example. I don't know, Silvia, perhaps you heard about it. Divaldo telling this story that there was this guy, and in the reincarnatory plan, some stage in life he needed to lose the arm. But when this person reincarnated, he or she lived the charity life, helping the others, being a good person, be a good example for the family, for the children, for the friends. So all good this person. And some stage this he had an accident and he lost the first part of his finger.
The digit of his
The
finger.
digit. Yeah, he lost the digit. And then was asked why I have to lose my thing, my digits, blah 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 blah. Blah. And the benefactor said, "Well, you are about to lose your arm, so you lost just your digits because of the good things you were doing." So it's more or less like this. So we can have conflicts, but conflicts can be resolved in a different way. It's normal. We talk about two different people, two different cultures, two different point of views. So
There is, I think, also there are wars as well for domination. We can't forget that. And I think the Second World War was very much like that. But eventually the war was finished and it taught people a lot of lessons, a lot a lot of new, the United Nations came from that. And so, every time man can, like the Spirit says, because it's the predominance of their animal nature, of the spiritual nature, and the desire to satisfy passion. Because sometimes it's what people think, that they will be here on this earth forever, and they wanted to dominate others. But I think the point that Charles made at the very beginning is very important to remember, that no matter how hard it is, how horrible, and I mean, we forgot, a lot of people now have forgotten about the Vietnam War. That was one of the most
mhm,
atrocious
yes,
wars. The suffering that was imposed on Vietnam is unbelievable, especially in the women and children. But this will come. Then we have conversations. Then I think as well, Charles said, oh, now there isn't that animosity anymore between Germany and France, that always. So eventually things are I mean, when you think about Northern Ireland, my God, it was absolutely horrible, the news that used to come from Northern Ireland all the time. And eventually
and we still have it.
they still
We
have it, but
still have
not
it.
like the way it used to be. Who
No,
don't have
no,
any
but,
blood
but
Sundays anymore, thank
exactly,
God.
but we still have it.
Yes, there is a still animosity, but that terrible, terrible war that was constant, and the loss of life. There are negotiations, and you can talk. And as we progress spiritually, less and less of these things will happen. I don't know. I'd like to make a suggestion. This chapter talks about cruelty and talks about war and murder. Maybe at a later time we could come back. Capital punishment, dueling. There is very all. I know around maybe at a later opportunity you could come back again to this theme.
Yeah, yeah. We can do it. No problem. Yes, it's already 10 o'clock. So
Gosh, yes.
yeah, so time's fly.
It's
11.
amazing, isn't it?
11 for Charles.
Oh yes, 11. Oh dear.
11 for
Yeah,
Charles.
yeah.
Yeah.
You are older than we are, Charles.
Yeah. So I'd like to say thank you to Marco for your inputs. Thank you, Perrine, for your comments as well. Let's go to our announcements here. So next week, our topic is on the difficult road. On the difficult road. This is a message from Emmanuel in the book Living in Spring. I don't know the message number, but we will discuss a little bit on the difficult road.
Okay.
Okay. So the Spirit Psychology group study is still on. If you are interested, please contact our friend Fabrício Assunção from the Spiritist Society of Bournemouth. He can help you to be part of the group. every Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Guilherme Diaz, Munir, and Charles, they have a study on the Medium's book. So everybody's more than welcome to join. Every other every other Tuesday, we have conversations on mediumship with Faye Waddington and Rafael Caldas. And every Monday, Ebony Paris, she holds a study on the book Castle City, which is the book No Solar. And this is it from us today. So I want to say thank you, everyone. I want to say as well, our dear Elsa, today is her birthday. So I would like to say happy birthday to her. Unfortunately, she is not here with us, but she'll be back soon. But I want to wish, I hope this message reach her. We want to wish you, my dear, a wonderful birthday, and uh, we are missing you this much. A lot. We are missing you a lot, my dear. Okay.
Okay,
So,
good night. God bless.
Good
Thank
night,
you so
Charles.
much.
Bonne nuit, Charles. Good night,
All the
Silvia.
best.
Good night. God bless everyone. Have a
Au
good week.
revoir.
Thank you.